Hello friends, this is Dr. Anurag and I welcome you to the session 24 of video mapping series targeting various competitive exams. And as you can see, the topic of today's discussion is the mapping of Australia. We are going to focus over world mapping in this session and we are going to see the only island continent of the world, that is Australia. In this session, we are going to focus upon the physical features of Australia, followed by the political features, and subsequently we will see some current affairs and we will end the session with probable questions which can be asked from the topic. And friends, if you are following this video series, you will emerge as a topper in solving MCQs based upon India and world mapping asked in various competitive exams. So let's start today's session on Australia. Let's have a look first over the location of Australia. Australia, as you can see, is located in between the Indian Ocean on one side and the Pacific Ocean on the other side. And it is completely in the southern hemisphere. It is located completely south of equator. As far as Antarctica is concerned, Antarctica is towards the south of Australia and Asia is towards the north of Australia, while South America is towards the east of Australia. The whole of Australia continent encompasses the island of Australia along with the smaller neighboring islands including New Zealand and some islands of Pacific Ocean. In this session, we are going to see only the island of Australia. In the subsequent session, we will target the remaining islands of Pacific Ocean. So let's start firstly with Australia's location and the crucial latitudes and longitudes passing through Australia. As you can see, there is only a single crucial latitude, that is the Tropic of Capricorn, which passes almost through the mid of Australia. And the famous states which are cut across by Tropic of Capricorn include the Western Australia, the Northern Territory and the Queensland in order. That is 3 states, or to be exact, it's 2 states only, Western Australia and Queensland. Northern Territory is a union territory under the Australian government. If we examine meticulously, Alice Springs, the city famous for crude and natural gas, is located exactly on the Tropic of Capricorn. Tropic of Capricorn on the eastern side of Australia passes just to the south of Great Barrier Reef. Great Barrier Reef is the largest coral reef of the world, located in the Coral Sea. Its southern boundary is made by Tropic of Capricorn. So that was what is important regarding Tropic of Capricorn and Australia's location. Let's start with the physical features, and in the physical features we will first cover the famous water bodies surrounding Australia. You can see on the western side there is Indian Ocean, and the portion of Indian Ocean present on the continental shelf have been named as Timor Sea, Arafura Sea, followed by Gulf of Carpentaria portion of Australia. So in order, west to east, location of the seas are Timor Sea, Arafura Sea and Gulf of Carpentaria, and these seas separate Asia and Australia. The Gulf of Carpentaria, you can see it is surrounded on 3 sides by land. In fact, a gulf is a water body encircled on 3 sides by land. Going towards the east, the Pacific Ocean, there is a sea of Pacific Ocean, that is the Coral Sea, and inside the Coral Sea is present the Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef is the largest coral reef of the world. It is world famous because of biodiversity, one of the richest biodiverse regions of the world. It's also known as the rainforest of the ocean, signifying the rich biodiversity. Great Barrier Reef has experienced coral bleaching because of numerous factors. Coral bleaching is the death of corals, and the biggest factor is global warming. The biggest episode of coral bleaching happened just 3 years back in 2017, and the first such episode was noted in 1998. Going more southwards, we see a part of Pacific Ocean, Tasman Sea, separating Australia from New Zealand. This side is the New Zealand portion. Towards the south of Australia, there is a small island of Australia called as Tasmania. In fact, Tasmania is separated from Australia by a strait known as Bass Strait. A strait is a narrow water body connecting two bigger water bodies. So Bass Strait connects Indian Ocean with Tasman Sea. That was all about the water bodies surrounding Australia. Let's focus upon the interior portion of Australia. In the interior, on the western side, we can clearly see that it is full of deserts, the most famous of them being Great Sandy Desert and the Great Victoria Desert. Along with that, the Gibson Desert and the Simpson Desert. And Great Sandy and the Great Victoria Desert are separated by the Tropic of Capricorn. A desert means that net precipitation or rainfall is less than evaporation, and that is why it's a drought belt, dry region of the country. It is also known by another name known as Australian Outback, signifying almost an uninhabited portion of Australia. And in fact, this region doesn't have the presence of any major cities except Alice Springs. This region is inhabited by the original inhabitants of Australia known as Aboriginals. Contrastingly, on the eastern side, Australia has presence of mountains as well as rivers. The most famous mountain is the Great Dividing Range, which follows the eastern coastline of Australia. The highest peak being Mount Kosciuszko. Though the average height of this mountain range is very less, yet it is of substantial help as it causes rains in the eastern plains part. And it is this part that has the presence of numerous big cities, example Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra and Melbourne. And in New South Wales and in Victoria, there are two famous rivers. We are going to see these rivers in detail upon a separate slide, but let me tell you the name. It's Murray and Darling rivers. In fact, these are the rivers which have made the southern portion of New South Wales arable and cultivable. And here is the land from where wheat is produced and exported throughout the world. So this was about the eastern part of Australia. You can see it's a green and arable part. On meticulous examination, there is another important point to notice. Australia lacks freshwater lakes upon the surface. There is in fact only a single lake present in South Australia which is famous. It's Lake Eyre. And lastly, another important portion of Australia is Great Artesian Basin present in Queensland. We are going to see this area separately upon a slide. Great Artesian Basin is in fact the region having high water table. The water is under high pressure locked in the rocks. It is akin to the wetlands ecosystem. One more thing I forgot to mention is Nullarbor Plain present to the south of Great Victoria Desert. Nullarbor Plain denotes treeless plain. It is present exactly towards the south of Great Victoria Desert. The western part of Australia shows stunted vegetation, all because of less rains, while the eastern part has normal vegetation and normal cultivation. So that was all about the physical features of Australia. Let's shift to the political features of Australia. Politically, Australia is a federal country having states along with some union territories. And the states we can clearly see upon this map: Western Australia, South Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania in order. So you can see Western Australia is number 1 state, South Australia number 2 state, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania. Along with that, there are two centrally administered territories. They are Northern Territory and Canberra. Canberra is the capital of Australia. Northern Territory is centrally administered because of the presence of Aboriginals, the original inhabitants of Australia, while Canberra is the capital and centrally administered region of Australia. Before Canberra, the former capital was Melbourne, but after a controversy erupted, the capital was subsequently shifted to Canberra. So that was about the political features of Australia. Australia also has overseas territory in Antarctica. We'll see it in a separate map. As far as resources is concerned, Australia is very rich in minerals such as gold. Gold is present in the region of Kalgoorlie and Coolgardie cities. In fact, these cities came up only because of gold deposits, and the gold out here is surface deposits. Apart from Kalgoorlie and Coolgardie, there is another city of Western Australia called as Pilbara, famous for iron ore. And this iron ore is exported via a famous port city, Port Hedland, towards the other countries. Apart from this, Alice Springs in Northern Territory is famous for crude and natural gas, hydrocarbons. And if we focus over Queensland, in Queensland the Cape York Peninsula, you can see this Cape York, it's a peninsula portion, it's famous for bauxite mining. In fact, the world's largest bauxite deposits are in this belt. And there is a very famous city for this, Weipa. Weipa is the name of the city which is world famous for bauxite mining. Apart from bauxite, Queensland also has substantial reserves of coal. And in coal, anthracite reserves have also been found near Brisbane. And the Adani Group of India has invested in these coal fields. Apart from this, the region of New South Wales has some lead and zinc deposits. And lastly, uranium mines are also found throughout Australia. Australia is one of the top producers of uranium in the world, and at one point of time it was the biggest producer of uranium in the world. At present, it's Kazakhstan which produces uranium the most, followed by Canada, followed by Australia. So this was all about the minerals of Australia. I am again repeating, Kalgoorlie and Coolgardie are famous for gold deposits, that too surface deposits. Pilbara is famous for iron ore deposits. Both Pilbara and Kalgoorlie are present in West Australia. Next, Alice Springs, present in Northern Territory, is famous for crude and natural gas deposits, while South Australia is famous for uranium mines. Apart from this, Queensland is famous for bauxite mining in Cape York Peninsula, besides coal mines in Brisbane Belt. And lastly, New South Wales is famous for lead and zinc mining. Let's focus upon the famous cities of Australia. The Western Australia has Perth as its capital, famous for fruits cultivation and fruit export. Moving eastwards, we see the capital of South Australia, Adelaide, famous for food processing industries. Apart from this, Victoria's capital, Melbourne, is very famous for industries. It's an industrial township. Apart from this, it also has deposits of hydrocarbons and coal, specifically lignite. Moving northwards, in New South Wales, the capital, Sydney. Sydney is the largest city and the largest port of Australia. In fact, it is one of the largest metropolitan regions of the world. Moving northwards, Brisbane is another belt of industrial township and mining region. And lastly, the island of Tasmania has Hobart as its capital, famous for apple exports, signifying apple cultivation in the belt. Melbourne also is famous for wheat exports, which is cultivated in the Murray-Darling River Basin, as you can see it here. Apart from this, the city of Mount Isa is present in Queensland. It is the largest city area-wise in the world. So that was all important in Australia's resources and cities. Focusing upon the regional geography of Australia, two regions are very important to be noted upon. The first is Murray-Darling River Basin of Australia. You can see it occupies a substantial portion of New South Wales and Victoria states. And Murray River and Darling River are combining to fall in the Indian Ocean belt. Another tributary, the Murrumbidgee River, is also coming up and combining with Murray River. This belt is famous for wheat cultivation, and this region is also known as Downs of Australia. Downs name has been given to the temperate grassland belt of Australia. It's similar to the prairies of North America. Another importance of this belt is the presence of sheep, the merino sheep, which was brought from Spain. Merino sheep is originated from Spain. It was brought to Australia and New Zealand, and now Australia has emerged as one of the biggest exporters of high quality wool extracted from merino sheep. So in short, we can say the Murray-Darling River Basin is the only cultivable area of Australia where agriculture is done, and It is this belt that exports wheat and wool. Second regional area which is of significance for the exams is the Great Artesian Basin. As you can see it here, it is a region of high water table, and the water is under high pressure in this, all because of the nature of the rocks. The rocks have locked the water in between them, and the ecosystem of this belt is akin to the wetlands. So that was about the two critical belts of Australia important for exams. Let's focus upon the Trans-Australian Railway, the Transcontinental Railway of Australia, which connects the western and the eastern parts of Australia, the Perth city in the west with Sydney in the east. In short, the Transcontinental Railway of Australia is located in the southern part of the continent, and the famous stations include Kalgoorlie and Coolgardie, the gold mining cities, Adelaide, Broken Hill. Broken Hill is in New South Wales, famous for lead and zinc deposits, and finally ending at Sydney. One branch line goes towards Melbourne, the capital of Victoria, and the second branch line goes towards Alice Springs en route to Darwin. So we can conclude that the Trans-Australian Railway has a substantial role in connecting the western and the eastern halves of the continent. Last topic to be focused upon in this session is the Australian bushfires. It's a contemporary topic of 2019 December and 2020 January. The bushfires are very common across Australia in the summer season of Australia, but in 2019 they ravaged across the whole of the coastline of Australia and causing huge devastation to the ecosystems of Australia. Numerous endemic animals such as kangaroo and koala got burnt in these fires. As per unofficial estimates, about 500 million animals, specifically mammals, have got burnt in this. And because of this bushfire, huge carbon emissions came up in the atmosphere, which will again precipitate global warming, causing glacial melting on the poles and subsequent sea level rise. It was the most devastating forest fire of Australia in the last 1 decade, and it signifies massive climate change which has happened in this region. Forest fires in Australia are not uncommon. The biggest cause is nature itself, all because of the drought region of Australia. In fact, Australia is the oldest, the most stable, and the most driest of all the continents of the world. But in this bushfires, the state which saw maximum casualties was New South Wales, which is the hub of Australian population. So this was all about the Australian bushfires of 2019. And to end the session, let's have a look over the probable questions that can be asked from the topic of Australia in various competitive exams. The first one, Tropic of Capricorn is located towards which part of the Great Barrier Reef? It is the southernmost extent of the Great Barrier Reef is defined by the Tropic of Capricorn. Second, the Great Artesian Basin is located in which province of Australia? It's Queensland, and it is having a very high water table. The groundwater is under high pressure. It is akin to the wetland ecosystem. The third one, Murray-Darling River Basin, is located in which states? It's New South Wales and it's Victoria. And it is this region which is known as the Downs of Australia, famous for wheat exports as well as the wool exports from the rearing of merino sheep. And the fourth one, the coral bleaching of 2017. It was the most devastating coral bleaching till date. It killed approximately 1/3 of the corals of Great Barrier Reef. And lastly, the Australian bushfires of 2019, December 2019, which states faced the major losses? It was New South Wales and Victoria. The wetter parts of Australia faced the losses. It shows the extent of climate change. It shows the extent of drought in Australia. It was the same region which is known as the Murray-Darling River Basin which faced the Australian bushfires in 2019. So that was all that is important in Australia. Thanks a lot for listening to the session.